Hi there. Welcome to another episode of RestorationCast. Uh, this time we're talking about the Addams family.
I used to know some Adamses that
Oh,
lived
yeah?
in California. We called them the Adams family.
Oh,
They were a neat homeschooling family. They still live out there. I guess I love them. But this is not that Adam.
no.
They didn't have the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, we're actually not talking about the Addams family today.
I was kind of anxious to see where that was in the book. I didn't know about that one.
Yeah, I will say Wendy's has been running a new special or something that has to do with Netflix started that TV show about Wednesday Addams.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't watched any of it, but they're selling these meals that are
creepy
or something.
Creepy
I
meals.
haven't tried the meals from Wendy's either, so
I hadn't either.
I know nothing about.
Go to McDonald's, get a Happy Meal. Go to Wendy's and get a creepy meal.
Yeah, exactly. To be totally honest, I've never seen the Addams family either.
You haven't seen them?
I haven't seen them.
They had the thing.
I'm aware. I was the one that found this picture.
He lived in like a little box. It was really kind of creepy.
Yeah, I think the way the reason they did that, the box thing, is because when the original show came out, they didn't have special effects to make that.
Oh,
and so they had to just have somebody's actual hand in a box.
In the box, yeah. Now we got CGI and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And ESPN and.
Yeah, I don't know when ESPN started, so it might have been before that.
Bro, no, it wasn't before that.
When did ESPN start?
ESPN started in 1978. I chose that date completely random. Somebody look that up. All right, now look, I gotta know why in the world we got a hand.
Well, we're talking about a gruesome story today.
Gruesome.
So if you're faint-hearted or if you don't watch horror movies,
you might not want to read the Bible.
Yeah, this might not be the podcast episode for you. We're talking about Jezebel.
Jezebel,
yeah.
One of my least favorite women in all of history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but she goes out quite dramatically.
She actually does. I get the reason you got the hand there now.
Yeah, it's because she was also one of God's least favorite women in all of history.
Evidently. Yeah. The way she went out wasn't like, there's no honor in the way she left the world.
Yeah, no. It kind of reminds me of in my Western Civ class, we're talking about the Russian Revolution.
The Russian Revolution?
Yes, it happened during World War I.
I had no idea.
But we're talking about Rasputin.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that name.
Yeah, and so we talked a little bit about how he was assassinated, and it caused a bunch of upheaval because the Queen of Russia, who's not actually called a queen, she's like a czarette or something.
Czarette.
I don't remember. But she was like taking a lot of counsel from him, and a lot of people didn't like it, and so eventually, even like the right-wing people that really support the monarchy, they're against him, and he gets assassinated. But the way they killed him, it didn't say this in the book. This is just my prior knowledge, so it's probably wrong. But my understanding is the first time they did it, they were afraid they didn't get it right.
They killed him twice?
So I think they shot him a bunch and poisoned him, and they drowned him. And
we're hoping one of those
just to make sure that he died. And I guess he did.
That sounded like the Catholic Church and whoever it was that translated the Bible, and then they dug him up and burned his bones or something, because we got to make sure this guy is.
William Tyndale, whenever they killed him, they strangled him first, because from what I've read, it was kind of out of respect.
Yeah, I have read that. Yeah, we respect you so much, we're going to strangle you.
Yeah, so they strangled him and then they burned him at the stake.
Well, I got to be honest. I think that I would appreciate that level of respect if I was fixing to get burned at the stake. That's got to be one of the worst way to go.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of one of those things. It's not like there was a good way to go out in this time period. I guess there's not really any way, but like the way we perform executions today, whenever we do it, is far more humane.
Yeah,
and like it's a little bit more like just going to sleep or something.
Back
then it was
back then. But there's a guy just like right now. I don't know. Here within the next month or so, is going to be executed by the firing squad.
Really?
He requested to be executed by the firing squad.
Wow.
He's a real bad dude.
Yeah.
But he's going to get his wish, I guess. I think it's in Florida. Anyhow, that doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about.
No.
If you get your big head out the way, they'd be able to.
Oh yeah. Here's your question.
See my big head. I can move my big head any way I want.
Next time I'm going to right justify everything so that
yeah, then I'll have
your head's in the way. Yeah. But yeah, so I say all that to say Jezebel was also executed.
We got his dog with. Oh, you're just skirting around the whole thing here, aren't you? If you guys know how this story ends, you completely get it, and it's terrible.
Yeah.
But she must have deserved it.
I guess so.
And if she deserved it, what kind of woman was she?
Yeah.
I mean, really. Married to old Ahab.
Quite bad, yeah.
We got the auto pen controversy going on with Biden, who really signed all the pardons and everything. Oh, Jezebel, she had her own auto pen. Yeah, I mean, Ahab was like anything she wanted, she got.
Yeah. Yeah.
She was a wicked woman.
Yes, and that's why
the dog came home with her bone.
Yep. All right, so we've got kind of a long reading today.
Oh, we do?
Yes, because it's a long story.
Well,
except, I mean, there's a little snippet there at the end that's not very long. That is really the.
Are you going to read it all at once?
I'm going to skip through some of it because it's really long.
Oh.
It's a whole chapter. But I feel like all of it adds to the story.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we'll just pay attention.
Yeah, so this is 2 Kings chapter 9, starting in verse 1. It says, Then Elisha the prophet called one of the sons of the prophets and said to him, Tie up your garments and take this flask of oil in your hand and go to Ramoth Gilead. And when you arrive, look there for Jehu, son of Jehoshaphat, son of Nimshi, and go in and have him rise from among his fellows, and lead him into an inner chamber. Then take the flask of oil and pour it on his head and say, Thus says the Lord, I anoint you king over Israel. Then open the door and flee. Do not linger.
And I think I know why. Because this is another one of those moments where we got two kings at once.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the young man, the servant of the prophet, went to Ramoth Gilead. And then the next part basically just says he did what Elisha told him to. So I skipped it.
Good man.
When Jehu came out.
Where are we at now?
This is verse 11.
Okay, go ahead.
This part's 11 through 13 and then verse 16. When Jehu came out to the servants of his master, they said to him, Is all well? Why did the mad fellow come to you? And he said to them, You know the fellow and his talk. And they said, That is not true. Tell us now. And he said, Thus and so he spoke to me, saying, Thus says the Lord, I anoint you king over Israel. Then in haste every man of them took his garment and put it under him on the bare steps. And they blew the trumpet and proclaimed, Jehu is king.
Ooh, big moment.
Then Jehu mounted his chariot and went to Jezreel, for Joram lay there, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, had come down to visit Joram. In the little space between verses 13 and 16, it basically says that Joram had been in battle with, I think, the king of Syria, and he was injured, so he came back to Jezreel to heal up, and so that's why he's in Jezreel.
Convalescing.
Yes. All right, verses 21 through 26.
Okay.
Again, I skipped part.
Yeah.
You noticed. During this part, basically, Jehu goes to Jezreel to get Joram, right? And Joram sees him coming, and he's like, What's up with this guy? And so he sends out several messengers to talk to Jehu. And they go and they're like, you know, is it peace with you, Jehu? And he gives them kind of this non-answer. What is it to you, right? Just get behind me, man.
Yeah.
And they do.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, they do. And so, Joram sends out another guy.
Yeah.
Same thing happens.
Now we got the whole army behind us.
Yeah, exactly. So then finally, Joram decides he's going to ride out himself. Right? So Joram said, make ready, and they made ready his chariot. Then Joram, king of Israel, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, set out, each in his chariot, and went to meet Jehu, and met him at the property of Naboth the Jezreelite. And when Joram said to Jehu, saw Jehu, he said, is it peace, Jehu? He answered, what peace can there be so long as the whorings and the sorceries of your mother Jezebel are so many? Then Joram reined about and fled, saying to Ahaziah, treachery, O Ahaziah. And Jehu drew his bow with his full strength and shot Joram between the shoulders, so that the arrow pierced his heart. And he sank in his chariot. Jehu said to Bidkar, his aide, take him up and throw him on the plot of ground belonging to Naboth the Jezreelite. For remember, when you and I rode side by side behind Ahab his father, how the Lord made this pronouncement against him. As surely as I saw yesterday the blood of Naboth and the blood of his sons, declares the Lord, I will repay you on this plot of ground. Now, therefore, take him up and throw him on the plot of ground in accordance with the word of the Lord.
Which is another story we had, really.
Yes.
Are we going to deal with that?
We'll get to that.
Okay, when do we get to the dog? Everybody wants to know.
That's the next part, right? So Jehu, he kills Joram.
We like Jehu, by the way. He's a hero. But
yeah. Ahaziah flees, and Jehu decides he's going to chase after him, and he kills him too.
They're both dead.
Yes, and I don't really know why he kills Ahaziah, because he's king of a completely different country. But
he was hanging out with the other guy.
Yeah, I guess I would have spared him.
You would have.
That's all I'm saying.
Well,
but in fact, as I'm learning in my Western Civ class, at the beginning of World War One,
yeah,
the Germans, or not the Germans, the Austrians, they really wanted to declare war on Russia.
Yeah,
and but France was visiting Russia at the time, and they didn't want to declare war on France.
No, too many.
So they waited until the French ambassadors leave, and then they're like, all right,
now we can.
War with Russia, and then Russia declares war on them, and France is like, well, we got to join them. So it didn't work. But anyway, if I were them, and apparently if Austria was Jehu, they would not.
They would not.
But
Jehu says, I don't care. I'm killing them both.
Yeah. Yeah, so anyway, he does. And then he goes to kill Jezebel.
And then we're going to get to the dog.
Yes, this is verse 30. It says, when Jehu came to Jezreel, Jezebel heard of it, and she painted her eyes and adorned her head and looked out the window. And as Jehu entered the gate, she said, is it peace, you Zimri, murderer of your master? And he lifted up his face to the window and said, who's on my side? Who? 2 or 3 eunuchs looked out at him, and he said, throw her down. So they threw her down, and some of her blood spattered on the wall and on the horses, and they trampled on her. Which, I don't know that it had to be quite that descriptive, but
well, we get
it gets worse.
She must have been up pretty high.
Yeah, I guess.
It's not like the second story, I don't know.
No, probably not.
So she gets thrown out this window.
Yeah.
After she got all dressed up, too.
Mm-hmm. And then he went in and ate and drank.
Because that's what you do when you get a woman thrown out the window and she splats blood all over you.
Yeah.
Let's just go have supper.
And he said, seen out of this cursed woman and bury her, for she is a king's daughter.
So after he eats, he's thinking, we ought to do something for that poor woman. She was a king's daughter.
Yeah.
So
she's
go out there and,
so just, do something with the body. But when they went to bury her, they found no more of her than the skull and the feet and the palms of her hands.
Why?
When they came back and told him, he said to her, this is the word of the Lord, which he spoke by the servant Elijah the Tishbite. In the territory of Jezreel, the dogs shall eat the flesh of Jezebel, and the corpse of Jezebel shall be as dung on the face of the field in the territory of Jezreel, so that no one can say, this is Jezebel.
She gets eaten by a dog, and her body becomes poop.
Yep, that's what happens when you get eaten.
Well, that's true, but I just didn't think we'd talk about it. So Fido, that's Jezebel's. Well, we're not sure. Femur, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know.
Yeah.
So all she had left was what? Her hands and feet.
Yes, and her skull.
Oh, the skull.
Yes, which I mean, those dogs were quite efficient. Jehu's just gone in for like a meal and some carousing, and
man, Gabriel, how do you know he did any carousing?
I don't, but
Gabriel,
I assume.
Yeah,
he was a king of Israel, so he couldn't have been that good.
Yeah. Oh, carousing. So we've had supper, and now we're gonna go check on Jezebel, and that's all we got left.
Yeah, which I mean, when you kind of wonder what happened exactly. You know, is it like this horde of dogs just run down there?
Yeah, I think it is.
I mean,
street dogs.
Yeah.
If she wasn't dead when she hit the ground, that woman had a bad way to go.
She was definitely dead once it was just her skull and
I think so.
Hands and feet there.
Yeah. I think so. Those eunuchs, they just threw it right out the window.
Yep.
Who's on my side? Throw her down here. Splat.
Yeah. And it kind of sounds like that's almost how the whole story goes, right?
Yeah.
Just constantly Jehu's like, hey, you guys want to join my side? And they're like, yeah.
I know.
You know, I think I do.
Are you coming in peace? Don't worry about it. Get behind me. And he comes into town. Hey, anybody in here on my side? All right, throw her down.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of sounds like whenever he gets crowned king, he's like in this war party. I assume these are all like Joram soldiers. And he walks out and he's like, well, that guy just crowned me king. And they're all like, yeah, okay. We'll follow you, Jehu. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
So, problems I take with this story.
This is terrible. In the Bible?
Number one, why would Elisha incite this coup? Because that's kind of what you see from the beginning of the story. Is it's not as though Jehu just decides one day, I'm gonna, become king of Israel, right? God actually ordains him and says, hey, I want you to become the next king of Israel. Which is interesting because Jehu isn't actually a very good guy.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, as I said before, he's a king of Israel. And none of them are good. So kind of what you see is there's maybe kind of this glimmer of hope at first where you kind of say, maybe Jehu is going to follow God, and then he pretty quickly decides, no, we're not going to do that stuff. But you kind of say, if God knew that was going to happen, because he's God, why allow this whole thing to take place at all, right? Number two is what's so important about Naboth's vineyard, because it's mentioned in the story. In fact, it's a pretty big plot point.
I gotta say, it's a big plot point.
Yeah. I mean, it's very important. Just the fact that it's mentioned at all makes it pretty important to the whole story. Why is
shows a lot of justice on God's part.
Yeah.
Even though we feel like maybe it's a little late. Doesn't know I'm never late. We'll get her done when it's time.
Yeah. And then number three is why is Jezebel getting killed in such a gruesome way? Number one.
I know the answer to that one. She is a wicked woman.
And then number two, why does it get described? Yes, I mean, just her dying is one thing, but
It's for God did it so we'd have this time to talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. You're right. You're right. Let's just skip this episode.
No, you're right. All right. Number one.
All right. Number one. Why would Elisha incite a coup?
Incite a coup. Now, and you may be already going to deal with this, but at this particular point, Ahab is dead. Ahab's the king that's going to lead us to that second point, your second question, with the Naboth vineyard thing. That happens with Ahab. But at this point, if I'm not mistaken, it's her son on the throne.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So Ahab has gone into battle. He's been killed. And I guess their son, Joram, is the new king of Israel.
Yeah.
And so God goes and says, we're going to do Jehu instead. He's going to be the new king. And he's going to just overthrow this entire regime, right?
Yeah.
Next chapter, which we won't be talking about, but exists. The next chapter, Jehu just goes in and he kills everybody, basically, right? He's killed the king and he's killed Jezebel, and now he's going to go kill all of Ahab's other kids, right? Just wipe out the entire dynasty.
Yeah. Well, I just thought that might be semi-important because at this particular point, I mentioned Ahab, and you think Jezebel, you think Ahab. But the one thing that I think is kind of important for us to recognize here is, Jezebel is so bad. She is so wicked. She's manipulated. She's henpecked Ahab, literally. And now it seems she's doing the same to her son. She's that manipulative, conniving old woman who still thinks she's pretty, so she go get decorated up and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so kind of what you see is, Ahab is a bad guy.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, Ahab honestly has a few moments
he does.
that are not terrible.
No, you're right.
And you kind of say, Ahab probably wasn't the problem here. It's the fact that he married Jezebel. That's the problem, right? She is the one that is causing all of this bad stuff. You even see that with the story we're going to look at with Naboth's vineyard.
Yeah, she's the instigator.
Yeah, Ahab doesn't actually do anything, right? He kind of does. He doesn't really follow the law of God very well, but at the same time, he doesn't do anything about it.
Yeah,
right. She does all the
because his witchy woman will take care of it.
Yeah, exactly. So again, you kind of have this question of why is God willing to use the tools that He does?
It is puzzling.
Yeah, and again, this is kind of a question we've hashed and rehashed. I think we talked about this with the whole Balaam's donkey thing with
Samson.
Yeah, exactly. And so the question comes up again because it's a pretty big theme throughout the Old Testament of God is going to use this person.
Yeah, and a lot of times it just ends up being wicked again. It doesn't necessarily, in our minds at least, solve the problem.
Yeah.
It just continues the wickedness.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And this kind of is similar to a conversation we had earlier about the effectiveness of ministry.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we obsess over how effective is it, right? What am I doing, and am I actually having any impact on people around me? And that can be important, right? We talk a lot about the idea of not focusing on the numbers and that kind of thing, but at the same time, those metrics can be important, right? It's a good thing to know whether or not people are leaving the church, that kind of thing. Right, and so those kinds of things aren't totally wrong. The problem is whenever you focus on effectiveness to the detriment of actually following God's will, right? Yeah. And that's something I think we do a lot. We say, I'm going to do things my way. I'm going to borrow from my own culture and do things the way that America thinks that things ought to be done. Follow the American dream. I'm going to do all of these things the way that we do it in our culture so that I can be effective, right? And I can bring in people. And we forget what God's message actually is.
Right.
And again, the idea is God isn't calling us really to be effective so much as He is calling us to be obedient and just do whatever He is telling us to do.
Yeah.
Right? And so we kind of have places like this in the Bible where we say, why is God doing this thing? Because it doesn't seem effective to us,
Right.
right? Because Jehu's going to turn around and he's going to be a bad king, right? And so you kind of say, why does God cause all of this bloodshed and kill the old regime just to put in another bad one?
Yeah.
All right. And the point is, God isn't doing this to make Israel an effective kingdom or a good kingdom, right? He's not doing what we think he ought to do. He's doing what he thinks is best, which is dispensing justice, right? And you see this idea later on in Scripture. Again, this is in the book of Habakkuk, or Habakkuk, or
Yeah, get that last K in there.
Yeah. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce it, but he was a prophet. And actually, this is a really interesting book because it doesn't fit the flow of all of the other prophets. Right? All of the other prophets, basically, what they do is they receive this message from God and they go out and they share it with people. And then those people either listen or they don't listen. Right? And sometimes you have like stories of those prophets. Sometimes it's just the message that the prophet is presenting. But Habakkuk,
thank you,
however you want me to say it, it doesn't fit the pattern, right?
No.
Instead, he's this man who has questions for God, right? And he's constantly kind of complaining to God and saying, I don't get why you're doing things this way. And the thing that makes it interesting is God responds. Right? He answers Habakkuk's prayers of, why are you doing all of these things? So he's actually a little bit more akin to like Job,
right,
than he is to the other prophets. But at one point, Habakkuk he prays to God, basically asking him about the Babylonian captivity,
okay,
and the exile and all of this bad stuff that's going on. And he says something kind of interesting. He says, are not from everlasting? O Lord my God, O Holy One, we shall not die. O Lord, you have ordained them as a judgment, and you, O Rock, have established them for reproof. So he basically says, we know that things are going to work out in the end, and you're just doing this to punish us. And then he goes a step farther. He says, you who are of purer eyes than to see evil and cannot look at wrong, why do you idly look at traitors and remain silent when the wicked swallow up the man more righteous than he? Right? So Habakkuk basically prays to God and he says, I know this is going to work out. And I know who you are. You're going to fix these things because you always do. And I know that you're doing this because your people have done terrible things and you're just punishing us for it. Well, why are you using Babylon? Right?
Yeah.
He basically says, they're so much worse than we are. So why are you willing to use this group? And again, the thing that's amazing about this book is God responds. And he answers. And this is what God says. This is Habakkuk chapter 2, verses 6 through 8. He says, shall not all these take up their taunt against him with scoffing and riddles for him and say, woe to him who heaps up what is not his own? For how long? And loads himself with pledges. Will not your debtors suddenly arise, and those awake who will make you tremble? Then you will be spoil for them, because you have plundered many nations. All the remnant of the peoples shall plunder you, for the blood of man and violence to the earth, to cities and all who dwell in them. So basically, that's a fancy poetic way of God saying that you're right. Right? The Babylonians are worse. Right? They are worse than you guys are, and they do deserve to be punished. And I will. Right? I am going to punish these people, and that's the hope that Habakkuk gets. Right? Is just this idea of I am going to serve justice to them, just like I'm serving justice to you. And so that's kind of what we get with this whole story of Jehu is we recognize uh, he is not a good person, right? He is in the wrong. He's not going to be a good king. He's not going to rule over a good kingdom. But God is using him to punish people that are also bad. and he's going to punish him, right? And so you kind of have this cycle of bad people punishing bad people because bad people need to be punished, right? And I think that's kind of a good thing. Um, I think that's kind of a good thing that God is willing to punish people. Right? He's willing to do that, but at the same time, that's where the gospel comes in. Right? Is the fact that God recognizes this cycle of people do bad things, and so they need to be punished, and they're punished by people who also deserve to be punished, and so it just goes over and over, right? And so God recognizes this cycle, and He says, "I'm going to step into it, and I'm going to uh, essentially make it to where this punishment stops, right? We're not gonna punish people anymore, not because they don't deserve it, but because I've taken that away, right? And there's no longer punishment. There's no more condemnation, not because that sin never happened or because we are not wicked, but because he takes it away and he removes that wickedness, and so the cycle can stop.
And we needed that reboot bad.
Yeah.
So we've got bad people punishing bad people.
Yeah.
And that's what Jehu's doing. He's a bad guy.
Yeah, exactly. And you see this constant cycle of bad people that are punishing bad people, and again, you see it with the Babylonians that
right.
Judah becomes this bad nation, and so God sends a bad nation to punish them, and then God sends the Persians to punish the Babylonians, and it's this constant cycle, right? And God sends Jesus in order to break the cycle, right? That's the whole point of the gospel is we're constantly within this cycle of sin, and the only way that we can get out of that cycle is looking to Jesus, right?
Good.
So that's the reason God incites this revolution, really, this coup with Jehu, right? Is because he recognizes that Ahab's family deserves to be punished, and so he does. He punishes them. Problem number 2. What was problem number 2?
Well, the second one was something. The third one that I really wanted to get to.
Yeah, problem number 2. What's the whole deal with Naboth's vineyard?
Naboth's vineyard.
Yeah, because we've got this whole thing with Joram is killed there, right? And Jehu basically says, I put him here on purpose.
Remember,
right?
Joram is the son of Jezebel.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so you kind of say, okay, what's that whole thing about? And I mean, if you read through the whole story, starting in First Kings, you get all the information, right? You know exactly what's happening. We're going to look back on this and have some kinds of reflections on why this story takes place at all.
Right? And tell me this before you do that though, Joram I don't think actually was involved in the original story.
Yeah.
So Joram is kind of like the child of the two conspirators, and he's going to really get whooped upon. Not that mom and dad didn't get whooped upon, but
yeah. God is kind of taking vengeance for Naboth by proxy here and saying, this guy didn't actually do anything, but he's the child of the people that did.
And he's bad too.
Yeah, and they all are. So.
Keeps his attitude going, old Jezebel attitude. Well, go ahead and give us a story so we can get. So this is the backstory of Naboth.
Yes. Okay. So this is 1 Kings chapter 21, verses 1 through 4, and then 8 through 10. It says, now Naboth a Jezreelite, notice it says he's a Jezreelite, so again, same area, right? He had a vineyard in Jezreel beside the palace of Ahab, the king of Samaria. So apparently Ahab had like a summer palace or something in Jezreel.
Him and Jezebel, they just would summer in Jezreel.
Yeah. And after this, Ahab said to Naboth, give me your vineyard, that I may have it for a vegetable garden, because it is near my house, and I will give you a better vineyard for it. Or if it seems good to you, I will give you its value in money. But Naboth said to Ahab, the Lord forbid that I should give you the inheritance of my fathers.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
You can explain that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we kind of have this idea. First of all, I want to point out we have this idea that Ahab didn't actually do anything, really. Like,
Yeah.
he doesn't know the law very well, apparently.
Clearly.
But what he actually does seem quite fair, right?
Yeah, I'm going to pay you for it. Or
yeah, I'll give you a better vineyard. It's just this one happens to be right by my house. So could I have it?
Have you ever thought about how closely this story relates to the Emperor's New Groove?
I haven't, but
this is the second one. You know, you got Jezebel, and you got, what's her name?
Yzma, yeah.
And then you've got, remember the Emperor, he wanted that hill.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yes. Yeah, he wants to have.
I just now thought of this second thought.
Yeah. Huh. I never thought about that, but
maybe it's an allegory.
Maybe. Go watch The Emperor's New Groove.
He's a llama for much of the movie.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That doesn't happen to Ahab.
No, not in this one.
It does happen to Nebuchadnezzar.
Nebuchadnezzar gets pretty close to being a llama.
Yeah.
Different story. We may deal with that one too later.
Yeah, so then Ahab gets sad.
They won't give me the land.
Yeah, it says, Ahab went into his house vexed and sullen because of what Naboth the Jezreelite had said to him, for he had said, I will not give you the inheritance of my fathers. And he lay down on his bed and turned away his face and would eat no food. Right.
You got this. This picture gets richer and richer. You got Jezebel, Yzma, and she's all wicked and everything. And then you got Ahab. He's nothing but a mush. He doesn't have, he gives, and just a cry, whiny baby.
Mm-hmm. So Jezebel, she goes in and she sees what's going on with Ahab. This is verse 8. It says, so Jezebel wrote letters to Ahab in Ahab's name and sealed them with his seal. And she sent the letters to the elders and the leaders who lived with Naboth in his city. And she wrote in the letters, proclaim a fast and set Naboth at the head of the people, and set 2 worthless men opposite him, and let them bring a charge against him, saying, you have cursed God and the king. Then take him out and stone him to death.
Oh, this woman bugs me.
Yeah. So I think another interesting thing, I hadn't thought about this before, but it's interesting how closely this story parallels the story of David and Bathsheba.
I thought that too.
Right. I mean, it's a vineyard instead of somebody's wife in this case, which honestly almost makes it better.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it makes it better or worse, because on the one hand, it's like, at least he didn't have an affair. But on the other hand, it's like, but he did this for a plot of land. So,
It's pretty sad.
Yeah. So anyway, that doesn't have anything to do with the lesson. I just thought it was interesting. But yeah, so you have this idea that the story is actually about promises. And it's the promises that God makes, which is something, again, that has come up over and over in this podcast. But that seems to be really what this story is about, is God makes promises to people and he keeps those promises.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so in this part of the story, you have this promise that God has made that your people are going to have this land. Right? And that's why Naboth says, no, you can't have my vineyard.
Yeah.
Right? It's not him saying, no, I like my vineyard and I don't want a better one. That's not what he's saying. What he's saying is, God promised that I would have this land.
Right.
This is my family's land. We've had it for generations because God said, this is yours. And I'm not going to give it to somebody else. In fact, the law forbids that.
That's right.
All right. It specifically says you can't sell your land to somebody from another tribe because that's your land. Right. And so Naboth says, no, I'm not going to do this because this is mine. Right. and it's mine because God promised it to me.
Right.
And then Jezebel tries to circumvent that. In fact, she successfully circumvents it, right? And so she goes and she has Ahab. She has Naboth killed for the sake of this plot of land. And so you kind of have this idea that part of this is just Naboth being innocent, right? That's part of why God punishes her. Is you killed an innocent guy, and for what, right? For one vineyard. Uh, that's part of it. Part of it too, I think, again, is that promise that God has set this whole thing up so that they could have this land, and then Jezebel, she tramples on those promises of God and says, "But I want it anyway."
Yeah.
Right. And Ahab is doing exactly the opposite of his duty as a king. Right. And the law, again, you have this idea that whenever Israel has kings, those kings are actually supposed to give up their property for their people, right? They're, the servant of the people rather than the people serving them. And Ahab's doing exactly the opposite of that, right? He's saying, "You give me your land, and make me happy."
And the kings were supposed to be the protectorate of the law. And it seems, number one, that Ahab didn't even know the law. And number two, he's married this pagan woman who clearly doesn't care about the law. She's circumventing everything that is of God. And both mistakes there are going to come back to nip him in the rear and get his wife eaten by dogs.
Yeah. Yeah. And so kind of what you see is another parallel to Solomon, right? That Ahab is, he's not somebody who, like Solomon, gets all of these different wives. And I mean, Solomon's still a pretty good king despite everything, right? He's very wise. And so he figures all that stuff out. But at the same time, you have this parallel to this idea of, somebody who doesn't follow God's law, and in particular, he doesn't follow the part of the law that says don't intermarry with people around you, right? God says that because he knows what's going to happen. He knows this is going to bring about idolatry, and that idolatry is going to bring about not following his law, which he gave to these people for good reasons, right? He had perfectly good reasons in mind, other than just, I want you to worship me, right? That's definitely part of it. But a lot of this law is, just this law is so much better than the law of anybody else. So, it makes sense to follow God's law, right?
Yeah. And of course, the big application for us today is that we need to be careful who we marry. I mean, really, you think about it. We got a lot of parents who are all about making sure their child gets a good education, gets a good job, but they never give any thought to whether or not they marry somebody outside their value system with regards to, what God really wants. And they end up letting their child marry somebody, and then there's this divided home and, whatever. You just think that we as Christians would have a little more brains to really prioritize the eternal. But you see, like everything that we prioritize has to do with staying here and rather than the eternal. But in this situation, like you say, Ahab, he made his bed.
Yeah.
And so it's no wonder that his wife she didn't get reined in at all by his leadership. And now his son's going to have get shot right between the shoulders, I guess, doesn't he?
Yeah. Yes, he does. Yeah.
And buried on Naboth's land.
Yeah. And so you have this idea definitely of the whole marriage thing. I think you also have this idea that God's prohibition isn't just for marriage, but it's also for intermingling with the people in general, right? There's, that the passage in the New Testament we always talk about with regards to marriage of like, don't be unequally yoked with unbelievers. Yeah,
right. Doesn't have anything to do with marriage.
Yeah, exactly. It applies to marriage,
certainly,
but you're right. It doesn't. It's not talking about marriage,
right?
Right. And so the point seems to be that in everything you do, whether it be marriage or business deals or whatever, unless you're doing it for the sake of bringing these people to God and showing Him to them, then why are you doing it with a non-believer?
Yeah.
Right?
Do you not have somebody of the faith who you could join up with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And so I guess kind of two things. Number one is, watch the company that you're keeping, because they have a big influence on you.
Amen.
But at the same time, it I think shows that we need to have more of a priority on our evangelism, right? That we need to be people that actually are intentional about it.
Yeah.
Right? Because kind of what we do a lot of the time is we just say, well, I'm out there in the world anyway, so I guess I'll be a good person.
Right.
And
Yeah.
they'll
Yeah.
see that and they'll want to become Christians, right? And that's not what the Bible teaches at all. What the Bible teaches is, whenever you go out into the world, go out intentionally so that you can evangelize to those people and so that you can draw them closer to God, not just because, well, I'm going to be here.
I'm going to be here, yeah. So
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's the reason you're there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, that brings us to problem number 3, which is really where we were trying to get to this whole evening.
Yeah. The whole time I didn't care about those other things we talked about.
Well, that's not true. I did. That was good stuff too, but I really eat my dogs.
Yes. So problem number 3: why is Jezebel killed so gruesomely? Yeah, and why is it recorded? And you already kind of answered this one, to be honest. It's because she's terrible.
Wicked woman.
Right, yeah. In fact, she's so terrible.
There, you did it! I didn't know if you were even going to do it. Every time I think of Jezebel, I think of Yzma. Oh, I'm glad you did that. Thank you, son.
You're welcome.
My night is complete.
No, but in fact, Jezebel's so wicked that she gets mentioned again in Revelation.
I know.
Right?
All the way at the end of the Bible, we're still talking. You want to talk about wicked? Let me tell you about this woman.
Yeah.
She's like the grand illustration of horrible women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's kind of one of those things. To this day, you don't meet people named Jezebel.
Not very many.
Right.
And if you do, it's because they are generally trying to rebel against God.
Mm-hmm.
They give themselves that name as a nickname or something because they want to kind of stick it in the face of God that I'm not one of yours.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And we even kind of use it as, I don't know if we ever use it as an insult. I'm sure people do. But occasionally we'll throw that word around as, kind of, it's a byword, right?
It is kind of a byword.
Yeah,
I think I have heard people say she's a Jezebel.
Yeah.
I think I have heard.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, often it's kind of in jest.
Yeah.
That it's not, we're not seriously saying, but saying somebody's a Jezebel is a little bit akin to saying like, that person is like a prostitute or something along those lines, right?
Yeah.
And so you kind of have that idea that even today, you hear the word Jezebel, and if you have any kind of religious background, you know what that means.
Right.
Right. And I guess it does, right? In the New Testament, they're still talking about her.
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting to me is that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Jezebel had really the reputation of sleeping around.
I don't know. I mean, Jehu does mention to Joram that it's because of your mother's idolatry and her whorings.
Yes, I always attach that to just what she promoted in her idolatry, but maybe you're right. Maybe she herself was kind of a sleeper. I always say, because idolatry and the temple priestesses and all that kind of was a joint thing there. But you might be right. Maybe she was a sleeper around her.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It seems like it fits with her character.
Well, it certainly does when you tie into Revelation.
Yeah.
Because that's basically what he's going to say about it,
Yeah. At the same time, though, I think you're right. There are a lot of cultic practices that they did that involved sex.
Yeah.
Right. And so I can see how that would be the idea. That it's not necessarily that she was going around, cheating on Ahab all the time, so much as it is that she introduced these practices to Israel, and so she's the one that is causing all of this.
And introduced might be tame. She promoted.
Yeah.
I mean, she completely upended the morality of God's people with the way she conducted herself and what she promoted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think kind of what you have to say is she probably didn't have affairs in the same way that we think of them.
Yeah.
Right? We tend to think of it as a very closed thing.
Yeah.
Probably it would be more along the lines of like Jezebel participated in orgies and that kind of thing.
Right.
Which I guess is worse. But
I guess it is.
Yeah,
because you're doing the other thing multiple times.
Yeah.
I guess so.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yzma. Perfect illustration of this woman. And then we get to Revelation, and basically God's going to say, this is what has been done to my people.
Yeah, exactly. So this is Revelation chapter 2, verses 18 through 20. It says, to the angel of the church in Thyatira write the words of the Son of God, who has eyes like a flame of fire, and whose feet are like burnished bronze. I know your works, your love and faith and service and patient endurance, and that your latter works exceed the first. But I have this against you: you tolerate that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophetess and is teaching and seducing my servants to practice sexual immorality and to eat food sacrificed to idols. And kind of what you see with this is in Revelation, you have a lot of Old Testament references, right? And I think kind of what you see typically is Revelation is it's calling back to the Old Testament to make kind of a word picture of what is going on at this time, right?
Well said.
And so, there's people that theorize, is there actually somebody named Jezebel in Thyatira? And I don't think that's the point at all.
I agree.
Right? I think what Jesus is doing here is he's saying, remember back in the Old Testament, remember Jezebel? You've got somebody who's doing that same thing right now, right? This lady, whoever she is, she's doing exactly what Jezebel used to do. In fact, they'll reference Balaam in kind of the same way, right? And the point isn't you got a guy named Balaam who's living in your city, right? The point is you've got somebody who's doing what Balaam did, right? He tempted the Jews to practice the sexual immorality, and you've got somebody who's doing exactly the same thing now. And so what you kind of see is this name of Jezebel, it endures throughout time to become this name of somebody who is a tempter, right? Somebody who is trying to lead the church astray, kind of a false prophet type of thing. Yeah, exactly. And so I think kind of the question for us is who or what are our Jezebels, right, in the church today? And those aren't necessarily sexual things. I think they can be. Sure. I'm sure frequently they are, but it's not necessarily that, right? To be a Jezebel is literally to be somebody who just leads other people astray and says, you should follow this path instead of following God's path, right? And same question, rephrased, I guess. Are we going to be Ahabs, right? People that just kind of kowtow and listen to whatever these people are saying to us and just go along with all of that. But we also have this message, again, going back to this idea of promises and punishment and all of that kind of thing. The reason that Jezebel's her punishment is so gruesome is because she's so bad.
Yes.
Right? Clearly. It's also because God promised that it would be like this.
True.
Right? And so we tend to think of the promises of God as having this positive connotation. Right? God is promising good things for me. talk about the promised land and that kind of thing. And so we have this positive idea of what God's promises are going to be, but God's promises aren't always positive.
Wow.
Right? And sometimes God promises, I'm going to destroy this person. And God always keeps those promises too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And so that really has to become motivation for us.
Amen.
I think in two ways, right? It has to become motivation for us to not be Jezebels, right? To not be the people that God is promising destruction to. And it also has to be motivation to us to preach to people, right? Because they are promised destruction if they don't follow God. But at the same time, how can they follow God if we never explain all of these things to them? In fact, that's what Paul says, right? Yep. Romans chapter 10, verses 13 through 14. For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Right? We have this idea of salvation, which leads back to this idea of destruction, right? That God has promised destruction for those that are not in Christ. But if you are in Christ, you're saved from that destruction, right? So everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. How then will they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how are they to believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how are they to hear without someone preaching? Right? And so we have this responsibility of, we know God has made promises, and we know that those promises aren't always positive, right? Some of those promises are literally destruction. And we also know God always keeps his promises. And so it's our job to be people that stand in the gap, right? Yeah. People that say, if these people just call on the name of the Lord, we know that they can be saved. But how can they do that if we never preach to them? And so we preach because we know God will punish people if we don't.
Right? Yeah, that's powerful. And so therefore, we are people who feel the heat of the flames that we will never experience, but know that many of our friends will. And so they don't seem to be paying attention that we're getting that close to the fire. So somebody's got to say it. Do you not feel that? We're getting close. You got to get right. We don't want to go there, kind of a thing. And I think that your application is profound.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of a Jeremiah thing, right? Fire shut up within my bones, that a lot of times we don't want to preach because who wants to be the guy that goes and tells somebody, you're wrong, you're headed for destruction, right? And God has promised that he's going to destroy you if you don't. Nobody wants to be that guy.
Right.
But at the same time, if we are truly following God, we will be like Jeremiah and say, but how can I not?
How can I not?
How can I be anybody other than the guy that's willing to say, this is what God has promised?
Yeah. Well, let's be frank, in the work that we do, it's nice to have somebody like us. We love to have the warm fuzzy comments that are made, and people who write in and say how good it is, and we go to the numbers and we see so many people watch what we produce, all that's good stuff, But at the end of the day, really and truly, that cannot be our motivation. And if it is, we are going to not be what God calls us to be.
Yeah.
And I've made the statement recently, and it just seems to be where my ministry has taken me, that if we really believe that we're living in the last days, then that means that the Lord is on the horizon. He's coming. Who was it that preceded the Lord's first coming in such a dynamic way? So dynamic, as a matter of fact, that Jesus would say there was nobody in the Old Testament greater than him. It was John the Baptist. But John the Baptist was little more than a troublemaker, if you think about it. I mean, he comes right out the gate. I mean, he's talking bad about all the leaders of the Jewish religion, etc. And gets his head cut off because he won't basically say the king's okay with living, his arrangement that he's got. If that guy prepared the way of the Lord the first time, What kind of people are we called to be?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you read the book of Revelation and you see what Jesus says in chapters 2 and 3. He himself is not complimentary to 5 of the 7.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to be people who are willing to take the unpopular route. And I'm really concerned for our preachers today, and especially for our elders today, because they seem to be the spiritual politicians of our culture. They just want to make everybody happy, and that's not our job, never been our job.
Mm-hmm.
Our job is to make God happy. If in the process other people are happy with it, great, but they're not likely to be. Loved your sermon this morning on Ezekiel. Ezekiel's told right up front, go preach this, and they're not going to listen.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of an assignment is that, God? It's my assignment, God says. That's the point. I want my assignment carried out. And I think John the Baptist had a similar mission,
Mm-hmm.
that he was going to preach and was going to get his head chopped off. He would introduce the ministry of Jesus, which will turn the world upside down. But at the end of the day, even Jesus gets killed. And then you find some of his most remarkable followers are going to end their life in martyrdom. And you look at the whole history of the church, you say, what is this? Is it really worth it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, because our job is not necessarily to convince people. Our job is to plant the seed. Now, clearly, we need to do it as best we can, but our job is to not grab it, and yank it up and make it grow. We can't do that.
Yeah.
And so in the process, we're going to be unpopular. I don't find many preachers and elders today who are willing to go that route. I just don't.
Yeah. And I think all of that comes down to a question of where your motives lie.
Yeah.
Right? And we have a lot of preachers that their motive lies in popularity or in money.
Don't want to have to move my family again.
Yeah.
Security, my kids are already in this school, so I'm just going to compromise the message because I don't want to have to go through the mess of losing a job. Well, how's that going to look on my resume? And so we got all these things that swirl when the big one should be, what does God think?
Yeah.
Preacher, you ought to get in the pulpit and you ought to say what God wants you to say, regardless of what your elders or your most giving members have to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of times it's easy to look at worse people and say, at least I'm not Joel Osteen, right? Or something along those lines.
Right.
And that's not good enough. We think it is, but it's not. In my preaching class at school, we had to actually talk about this idea of whenever other preachers come in, people are going to like them better, right? Because it's new, it's fresh. And they'll hear that guy, and you're going to be jealous because that other preacher, does something different, and everybody's going to love it, right? And that's fine, but at the same time, I think that kind of comes as a I don't know, kind of question your motives there. If you're saying, if I'm jealous that other people are hearing the message and they like it better from somebody else, right? Maybe my heart's not in the right place. I mean, that's easy to do, right? That's not calling anybody out because, I do that. I think everybody does that. But at the same time, whenever you do that, don't just move on and say, this is something that happens to everybody. Say, okay, is this happening to me because my motives are in the wrong place, right? Or with the whole money thing, we're not typically like televangelists that are saying, I want everybody to give me their money and that kind of thing. That's not who we are. In most cases, we're actually pretty good. We don't, we're fair and all of those kinds of things. But at the same time, we tend to be people that say, but I want security, like you pointed out. I want to make sure that I'm able to pay the bills, and that's fine, right? It's okay to want to pay the bills. It's okay to want security for your family, but it's not okay if that comes to a point where you say, there's a message that I need to preach, and I can't do it because I might get fired.
Yeah, that's good. And it also count the cost, young man. If you're going to be going into ministry, count the cost, because it's steep if you're going to do what you're called to do. This young man sitting across from me here has gone through it with me. He knows what it's like to be in the valley because you have spoken the truth and been rejected. And so I think that Gabriel is well on his way to understanding what it is to count the cost. But then again, until you're in the middle of it and it's you who is the one who's being rejected and hurt and pushed aside and all that, it's hard. But know up front that you're not getting into this for popularity. You're not getting into this if you're going to be a preacher. You're not getting into this so that you can just, keep the boat steady, and no waves. We're just going to be calm the whole way through. If you're expecting that in ministry, and if you get that in ministry, you have been totally ineffective in ministry, because that's not what ministry is about.
Yeah.
Well, you got me off there. Got me onto my soapbox. All right, show them the questions again. Get your head out the way. I just wave my arm back and forth. I'll just stretch. Oh, can't stretch that way.
Yeah, so there's your questions.
Right
if you want to do something with those.
You should. Yeah. You should really do something.
Answer them.
Answer them all.
Yeah. Don't forget to keep in touch with us.
Amen.
We're on Instagram at RestorationCast, or you can go onto our website, either sunnychilds.com or restorationschoolbiblicalstudies.com, and look us up on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, iHeartRadio. Search up Restoration Cast on any one of those, and you should be there with all of our old episodes. So if you watch this and you liked what you have heard, you can find us in all of those places and watch everything else we've done. All right.
Like us and give us a thumbs up and send us a nice warm fuzzy note.
Yeah. The thumbs up emoji is kind of a severed hand like thing here.
I hadn't thought about it.
Yeah. I hadn't either until but yeah.
Give us a severed hand.
All right. Talk to you guys next week.
All right.